Chapter 1. Stop playing safe. Branson's rule of jump first, build after. You've been taught to wait. Wait for clarity. Wait for confidence. Wait for certainty. But Richard Branson didn't wait. He didn't stall. He didn't ask for permission. He jumped. He moved. He took action long before he knew enough. That's the key. And that is the mindset you're here to learn. Because whether you like it or not, success is reserved for the people who move first and adjust second. And Branson proves this again and again. When he launched Virgin Records, he didn't have a perfect plan. He didn't have industry connections. He didn't have a safety net. What he had was something far more powerful: the willingness to act before perfection. The willingness to jump and figure it out on the way down. You might think that's reckless. But in reality, it's strategic. Because failure is data, not disaster. Branson said it himself. You don't learn to walk by following rules. You learn by doing, and by falling over. Let that sink in. This is not poetic language. This is operational philosophy. Branson succeeded not because he avoided falling, but because he treated every fall as a lesson he could immediately use. And if you're honest with yourself, this is the opposite of how you operate. You wait. You overthink. You gather information, not because you need it, but because it delays the moment you have to act. The more important issue is not that you lack knowledge, it's that you lack motion. What we need is not more preparation, but rather more participation. Action is the entry fee. Perfection is the excuse. Look at Virgin Atlantic. Branson didn't build an airline because he had decades of aviation experience. He built an airline because a flight got cancelled and he decided to charter a plane, on the spot. He wrote Virgin Airlines on a board, charged passengers $39 each, and took off. That's not planning. That's not perfection. That is raw, decisive, high-speed action. And here's the truth. Speed beats certainty. Always. Virgin Atlantic should have failed. It started with one plane, in a market controlled by giants. It entered an industry defined by regulation, capital, and brutal competition. Experts told Branson he was foolish. But don't just take my word for it. Look at what happened. Virgin Atlantic survived because it moved fast enough to discover what worked while everyone else stayed stuck in analysis. That's the power of jump first, build after. And here's the part you must internalize. You have a choice. You can keep playing safe, pretending that certainty is necessary. Or you can adopt Branson's rule. Move, then refine. Start, then correct. Jump, then build. It's not that Branson was fearless. It's that he refused to worship fear. It's not that he knew he would win. It's that he accepted losing as part of winning. It's easy to say you'll start when you're ready, but harder to admit that you will never feel ready. That's why Branson operates from a different assumption. Risk is the entry fee. Failure is the tuition. If you don't pay, you don't get in. When he started Virgin Records, he didn't know how record stores worked. He didn't know how distribution worked. He didn't know how to negotiate with artists. But what he did know, what he repeated constantly, was that starting was more valuable than knowing. He built the plane while flying it, just as he did with Virgin Atlantic, and Virgin Mobile, and Virgin Galactic. This isn't recklessness. Far from being dangerous, it actually reduces your long-term risk. Because the faster you start, the faster you get information. And the faster you get information, the faster you make adjustments. And the faster you adjust, the faster you win. Remember this. Certainty is slow. Action is fast. Planning is theoretical. Momentum is real. The real question is not, what if I fail? The real question is, what am I losing by waiting? If we don't act, then we risk something far worse than failure. We risk stagnation. We risk wasting years of potential because we are waiting for a clarity that will never arrive. So let's break down Branson's technique. Practical, simple, and powerful. Technique 1. Launch before you're ready. Branson never waits for ideal conditions. He starts when the idea has energy, not when the plan has certainty. You must do the same. Not because jumping blindly is noble, but because momentum creates clarity. Start the business. Publish the first video. Send the proposal. Make the call. Start the process. You don't need perfect readiness. You need movement. Technique 2. Gather data from doing, not thinking. Branson treats every failure like an intelligence report. When Virgin Cola failed, He didn't sulk. He studied it. He extracted the insight. Don't pick a fight with a monopoly unless you have a unique differentiator. That single insight protected him from repeating the same mistake with future ventures. You must do the same. Study your losses. Extract the lesson. Apply the insight immediately. Failure is feedback. Feedback is fuel. Fuel is forward motion. Technique 3. Adjust quickly and publicly. Branson doesn't hide his adjustments. He makes them fast and makes them loud. Because he knows what most people ignore. Speed builds confidence. The longer you wait between attempts, the weaker you become. The faster you iterate, the more resilient you become. Not only does quick adjustment create growth, but it also creates identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who waits, and you start seeing yourself as someone who moves. Now let's turn the spotlight onto you. What are you still waiting for? You might think you need more time, but in reality, you need more courage. You might think you need more knowledge, but in reality, you need more motion. Whether you like it or not, the world rewards the person who moves first. It's not that smart people win, it's that fast people learn. It's not that the bold never fail, it's that they turn failure into their competitive edge. So here's the challenge. Stop playing safe. Stop collecting information you'll never use. Stop negotiating with hesitation. This chapter is your shift. This chapter is your permission, though you don't need it. This chapter is your line in the sand. Because if you want Branson-level outcomes, then you must adopt Branson-level behavior. Jump first. Build after. Move now. And as you master this mindset, as you start acting in spite of uncertainty, as you begin turning motion into momentum, you'll unlock the truth of this entire audiobook. Failure is not the end, it's the fuel. You've taken your first step. You've shattered the illusion of safety. Now, you're ready for the next stage of transformation. Chapter 2. Fail fast. Learn faster. Why Branson tests more than he plans. There is a pattern behind every major move Richard Branson has ever made. And if you understand this pattern, you unlock one of the most powerful habits in the world. The habit is simple, but not easy. He tests. He experiments. He puts ideas into motion long before the rest of the world has finished thinking. That's the key. Because while most people are waiting for the perfect plan, Branson is already collecting the data that the plan needs. You have a choice here. You can continue to be the person who plans endlessly, who imagines outcomes, who hopes for certainty. Or you can become the person who tests, adjusts, and grows with every attempt. It's not about being reckless. It's about being responsive. Not only does testing accelerate your success, but it also exposes the hidden assumptions that planning alone can never reveal. Branson lives by a core principle. Planning is predicting, testing is knowing. Whether you like it or not, prediction will always be weaker than reality. That's the truth most people avoid. The more important issue is that planning feels safe. Planning feels controlled. Planning feels intelligent. But it traps you in theory. Testing, on the other hand, forces you into progress. It forces you to face real-world feedback, which is the only feedback that matters. Look at Branson's early ventures. Virgin Records did not begin with a massive business plan. It began as a small mail-order experiment. Branson wanted to see if people would buy discounted records through the post. It was a low-risk test, a micro-experiment that revealed customer appetite before he ever invested in brick-and-mortar stores. That's how Branson thinks. Start small. Move fast. Learn quicker than the competition. You might think large success requires large planning, but in reality, Branson has shown for decades that micro-experiments create macro wins. This is where most people get it wrong. They assume they need everything mapped out before taking action. But what we need is not larger plans, but rather smaller tests. You don't need a full blueprint to begin. You need a prototype, a version 1, a small step that generates information. Because without data, you're building blind. Branson's approach is clear. Test cheaply. Test quickly. Test publicly. Don't just take my word for it. Look at the evidence. Virgin Atlantic started as a test flight. Virgin Mobile began as a test partnership. Even Virgin Galactic started as a test balloon experiment to prove feasibility. It's easy to say I'll start soon or I just need more clarity, but harder to admit the truth. You are delaying because planning feels safer than doing. But safety is not the foundation of progress. Action is. Let's examine one of the most important examples in Branson's career, Virgin Cola. Virgin Cola was designed to compete with Coca-Cola, a giant with global dominance. Branson believed his brand's energy and momentum could carve out space in the beverage market. But here's the key. He didn't know. He couldn't know. So he tested. He launched the product locally. He studied demand. He looked for adoption curves. He ran experiments on pricing, marketing, and packaging. The product failed. And here is where most people misunderstand Branson. They think the failure was a defeat. Far from being a setback, it actually became a turning point. Because Branson extracted the lesson. He learned that you don't compete with an entrenched monopoly without a fundamental differentiator. He learned that consumer loyalty in certain industries is deeply ingrained. And most importantly, he learned that not every Virgin product needed to scale. That single failure shaped decades of decision-making. It didn't end his momentum, it strengthened it. The real question is not, why did Virgin Cola fail? The real question is, why did Branson benefit from the failure? And the answer is simple, because he treated the test as data, not defeat. Not because he was lucky, but because he was strategic. Branson once said, "Business opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming." That quote isn't about optimism. It's about experimentation. It means that tests, big or small, are stepping stones. Some work. Some don't. What matters is movement. Just as scientists run controlled experiments to reveal truth, so too must you run controlled risks to reveal direction. If you don't test, then you risk wasting years on the wrong idea. If you don't test, then you risk building something nobody wants. If you don't test, then you risk letting fear disguise itself as preparation. This chapter is about breaking your addiction to planning. Because that's what it is, an addiction. Planning gives you the illusion of progress without requiring action. Testing gives you reality. It gives you feedback. It gives you power. So how do you think and act like Branson? Let's break it down into practical steps you can begin today. Technique 1. Start with a small, fast test. Before you commit, test the simplest version. That might be a landing page for your business, a short-form version of your content, a trial offer, or a mini product. Not because small tests are easy, but because they are efficient. They reveal truth quickly. You don't need 90 days of planning. You need 9 days of testing. Technique 2. Create real feedback loops. Branson builds feedback loops into every venture. He asks customers directly. He observes behavior. He iterates publicly. This is what you must do. Don't assume you know the market. Test what the market actually does. Because in business and in life, behavior always beats assumptions. Technique 3. Detach emotion from experimentation. Branson doesn't get emotional about tests. He doesn't take failure personally. He takes it informationally. That's the discipline you must develop. It's not that your idea isn't good. It's that your test isn't refined yet. Failure isn't a verdict. It's a measurement. You have a choice. You can be the person who protects their ego, or the person who protects their growth. Technique 4. Run multiple experiments at once. Branson often tests several ideas simultaneously. That's strategic, because the future isn't predictable. But experiments expose the path. You don't need one perfect idea. You need 10 imperfect tests. Technique 5. Move from testing to scaling quickly. Branson doesn't sit on good data. When something works, he scales it hard. Virgin Atlantic took off because Branson doubled down fast. Virgin Records expanded because the early test results were strong. When you see traction, amplify it. Move from test to action without hesitation. Let's bring it all together. The lesson of this chapter is simple. Test more. Plan less. Learn faster. Because the person who learns fastest wins. Not the smartest. Not the safest. The fastest learner. This is about more than business. It's about the mindset you bring to every part of your life. You might think you need more information, but in reality, you need more experimentation. You might think you're not ready, but the truth is, readiness comes from doing. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of your transformation. Your testing era starts now. You now understand why failure isn't the enemy. It's the engine. And this momentum leads us directly into the next essential skill. Chapter 3. Make problems profitable. Turn every setback into a strategy. There's a moment in every entrepreneur's life where they either break or bend the world. Richard Branson chose the latter. And he did it using a principle so deceptively simple that most people overlook it every single day. Problems are profits in disguise. You might think that obstacles are signs you're going the wrong way, but in reality, they are often signposts pointing directly toward opportunity. Branson learned this the hard way, during the early days of Virgin Atlantic, when his airline nearly collapsed before it could even grow wings. And yet, this near failure became the blueprint for one of his most powerful techniques, the problem-to-profit loop. Whether you like it or not, life will hand you friction. What separates the average person from the empire builder is the ability to turn that friction into fuel. That's the key. So let's break down exactly how Branson does it, and more importantly, how you can apply the same method, starting today. The origin of the problem-to-profit loop. The story is now legendary. Virgin Atlantic launched its first flights with ambition, excitement, and a disastrous lack of planes. A mechanical failure grounded one of their early aircraft, stranding passengers and threatening the brand before it even took flight. Most founders would panic. Most founders did panic. But Branson didn't. He applied a different lens. What friction are people experiencing right now? Frustrated passengers. Lost time. No solutions. And instead of hiding behind excuses, he did something that defied the industry norm. He personally chartered another plane, walked around the terminal, and wrote a sign that said, Virgin Airways, $39 one way to Puerto Rico. He filled the plane. He solved the problem. And he turned a setback into the first profitable spark of Virgin Atlantic. Far from being a failure, that moment became the foundation of his mantra. Spot the friction. Sell the solution. It's not that Branson got lucky. It's that he saw what others ignored. And the more important issue is this. You can do it too, if you discipline your mind to respond the same way. Why this works? You have a choice every time you face friction, complain, or capitalize. Most people choose the first. Branson built an empire by mastering the second. Why does this strategy work? Because every friction is evidence of unmet demand. And unmet demand is the birthplace of value. Not because the world magically rewards effort, but because solving a problem others feel but can't address instantly positions you as indispensable. Don't just take my word for it. Look at history. Uber was born from the friction of unpredictable taxes, Airbnb from the friction of expensive hotels during conferences, Dyson from the friction of weak vacuums. Just as these innovators transformed problems into billion-dollar solutions, so too can you turn your setbacks into leverage. But it requires a disciplined, systematic process, not wishful thinking. The Branson method, the step-by-step problem-to-profit loop. Here is the exact framework Branson uses. It's not magic. It's not theory. It's repeatable. Step 1. Spot the friction. Every profitable idea starts with an irritation. Something that makes you, or others, say, this shouldn't be this hard. Ask yourself, what do people constantly complain about? What are you frustrated with repeatedly? Where is the system slow, broken, overpriced, or outdated? The real question is not what business should I start, but what friction is demanding a solution. Step 2. Identify the emotional cost. Branson doesn't just see problems. He sees how people feel about those problems. Inconvenience. Anger. Stress. Fear. Why? Because emotions reveal urgency. The stronger the emotional friction, the higher the value of the solution. Step 3. Build the simplest possible fix. Not a perfect solution. Not the final version. The simplest solution. Branson didn't build a fleet. He chartered one plane. He didn't build software. He walked around with a sign. What we need is not complexity, but clarity. If we don't simplify, then we risk never taking action at all. Ask yourself, what is the smallest action that would instantly improve this friction right now? Step 4. Monetize the relief. People don't pay for products. They pay for relief. Solve a pain point, and payment becomes the natural next step. Whether you like it or not, emotion drives buying, especially the emotion of alleviating a problem. What's the price of comfort? What's the price of convenience? What's the price of saving time, embarrassment, or frustration? If your solution removes friction, it already has value. Your job is simply to capture it. Step 5. Scale what works. Once you solve friction for one person or one group, you refine and expand. Branson repeated this loop across industries: music stores, airlines, mobile networks, trains, finance. Again and again, he applied the same principle. Where are people struggling, and how do I fix it better, faster, or with more humanity? This isn't the end. It's the beginning of a systematic empire-building method. Your turn. Applying the problem-to-profit loop. Let's bring it back to your life. You don't need a business empire. You don't need millions. You don't need anyone's permission. You only need to discipline yourself to look at life through a new lens. Here's how you do that right now. 1. Make a friction list. In the next 24 hours, list every friction you experience or observe. Slow systems, annoyances, repeated frustrations. Nothing is too small. 2. Categorize. Personal versus market friction. Personal friction leads to self-improvement solutions. Market friction leads to business opportunities. Both are profitable. One in your life, one in your wallet. 3. Pick one and simplify. Choose one friction that stands out. Don't overthink it. Don't wait for the perfect idea. Start with the simplest fix. 4. Validate with one person. Show the solution to someone affected by the same friction. Ask, would this solve your problem? If yes, you've got value. If no, adjust and repeat. 5. Expand with discipline. Consistency beats passion. Systems beat motivation. Fix the friction. Test the solution. Improve the offer. Do this repeatedly, and setbacks become stepping stones. Barriers become bridges. Problems become profits. Bringing it all together. Branson didn't build Virgin by avoiding problems. He built it by confronting them with creativity and courage. You might think your setbacks are signs to quit, but in reality, they're invitations to innovate. You have a choice: fear the friction, or turn it into fuel. Remember, spot the friction. Sell the solution. Over and over again. This chapter's lesson is simple. Your biggest frustration might be your biggest opportunity, if you're disciplined enough to see it. You've learned how to turn setbacks into strategies. Now, let's move to something even more powerful. Chapter 4. Build fear immunity. Train yourself to run toward difficulty. Fear is the invisible force that shapes more lives than failure ever will. It stops people before they even start. It convinces smart minds to play small. And it traps potential in quiet, comfortable corners where nothing extraordinary ever grows. Richard Branson understood this early. And instead of trying to eliminate fear, which is impossible, he learned to immunize himself against it. You might think Branson's stunts, balloon flights, boat crossings, high-risk world records, were about ego or thrill. But in reality, they were his fear rituals. They were structured practice sessions designed to push his psychological limits so everyday challenges felt small by comparison. That's the key. He trained fear like a muscle. Not only to withstand it, but also to use it. And you have that same choice. You can let fear shrink your world, or you can condition yourself to expand beyond it. The fear rituals that built an empire. Let's look at the actual techniques Branson used. In 1987, he attempted to cross the Atlantic in the Virgin Atlantic Challenger 2. The boat nearly sank. Rescue crews intervened. Branson said later, "You don't learn to walk by following rules. You learn by doing, and by falling over." It wasn't recklessness. It was conditioning. Then came the balloon expeditions. In 1991, he crossed the Pacific in a hot air balloon, becoming the first person to do it. He reached speeds of more than 240 miles per hour. When asked why he kept risking his life, he answered, "If you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space." But most people overlook the deeper intention. These adventures weren't public relations stunts. They were psychological training grounds. Branson knew that fear loses its grip the moment you step toward it. Just as weightlifters add resistance to grow strength, so too did he add controlled danger to grow courage. Far from being insanity, it actually created immunity. And he repeated this ritual throughout his life. On land, on water, in the air. He conditioned himself again and again until fear became not a threat, but a signal. A compass. A sign that said, "This is the way." The philosophy of fear immunity. Branson's mantra was simple and powerful. The fear you feel is the path you need. Not because fear is glamorous, but because fear reveals potential. Not because danger is noble, but because avoiding discomfort is deadly to greatness. The real question is not, how do I get rid of fear? But how do I train myself to move anyway? You don't need their permission to expand your tolerance for difficulty. You don't need perfect confidence. You need discipline. You need exposure. And you need the courage to let fear become your teacher instead of your prison. It's easy to say you want a bigger life, but harder to step toward the feelings that come with it. It's easy to say you want success, but harder to embrace the discomfort required to earn it. No one can deny that fear is uncomfortable, but what's often overlooked is this: discomfort isn't a warning. It's a workout. And if we don't train for it, then we risk shrinking every time life pushes back. The psychological upgrade: rehearse adversity. Here's where Branson's brilliance becomes useful for you. What we need is not blind bravery, but rehearsed adversity. A psychology that has already felt difficulty before difficulty arrives. Branson wasn't preparing for balloon flights. He was preparing for business problems, personal setbacks, and moments of chaos where others froze but he stayed calm. He engineered stress so that real stress felt like déjà vu. This is about more than courage. It's about conditioning your nervous system. It's about building familiarity with discomfort so you stop interpreting it as danger. Just as athletes visualize competition, so too must you become familiar with your own possible failures, so they stop terrifying you. And here's how you do it. The Branson Fear Immunity Method. Step by step. Branson didn't leave fear training to chance. He built rituals. You can too. Step 1. Identify your avoidance zones. Fear hides in predictable places. Where do you hesitate? What conversations do you avoid? What tasks do you postpone until it's painful? The more important issue is not why you avoid them, but what avoidance is costing you. Write them down. You can't fix what you don't face. Step 2. Use fear as a directional signal. Every time you feel fear, hesitation, anxiety, tightness in your chest, say to yourself, "The fear I feel is the path I need." This isn't affirmation. It's training. You're rewiring your reaction. You're turning fear from a red light into a green light. Step 3. Practice controlled exposure. Branson didn't start with balloon flights. He started by saying yes to small risks, public interviews, small ventures, uncomfortable conversations, new challenges. You do the same. Choose something uncomfortable but safe. Take one step toward it today. Speak when you'd usually stay silent. Ask for what you want. Start the thing you delay. Exposure creates tolerance. Tolerance becomes immunity. Step 4. Rehearse the worst-case scenario. Most fear comes from uncertainty. Branson handled this by rehearsing disaster mentally, so his body wouldn't panic in real emergencies. Ask yourself, what if this goes wrong? Then what? And then what? You'll notice something powerful. The worst case is rarely fatal, and often manageable. By rehearsing adversity, you take away its power. Step 5. Anchor the reward. Branson conditioned himself not only to face fear, but also to associate it with growth. After each fear-based action, he praised the attempt, not the outcome. You do the same. Reward the courage. Celebrate the effort. Make bravery familiar. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of your new identity. Your new fear identity. You might think bravery is something you're born with, but in reality, it's trained. It's crafted through repeated exposure. It's shaped by ritual. It's sculpted by action. Whether you like it or not, fear will always appear. Your job is not to eliminate it. Your job is to immunize yourself against it. And the more you lean into fear with discipline, the faster your life expands. Stop trying to feel ready. Stop trying to feel fearless. Start training your nervous system to run toward difficulty. Because here's the truth. Fear avoided becomes fear multiplied. Fear confronted becomes fear minimized. And once you build fear immunity, the world stops feeling dangerous and starts feeling conquerable. Bringing it all together. Branson didn't chase fear for adrenaline. He used fear as a tool, a teacher, a compass. He treated it as the clearest signal of where his potential waited. And now you have the same blueprint. You know what to do. You know what to stop doing. You know how to train yourself to run toward difficulty instead of shrinking from it. The fear you feel is the path you need. And every time you follow it, You build strength that can't be taken away. Chapter 5. Master the bounce back. Recovering quickly is a superpower. Failure doesn't destroy people. Delay does. And Richard Branson understood this better than most entrepreneurs alive. Because while everyone else obsessed over the size of their failure, Branson obsessed over the speed of his recovery. That's the key. You have a choice. Drag your failure with you for days, weeks, even years, or bounce back within hours, like Branson trained himself to do. And make no mistake, it is training. It is discipline. It is a deliberate system, not a personality trait. And if you adopt that system, your entire life accelerates. Branson said, "You don't learn to walk by following rules. You learn by doing and by falling over." But what he didn't add, what his behavior reveals, is that you also learn by getting up immediately. Not tomorrow. Not after a week of emotional spiraling. Not after 5 conversations about who's to blame. Immediately. Because it's not the fall, it's the lag. Remember that phrase. You will hear it again and again, because repetition is how we rewire behavior. It's not the fall, it's the lag. The Branson 24-hour reset rule. One of Branson's most powerful techniques was his personal 24-hour reset rule. After any failure, big or small, he forced himself into a structured sequence. Immediate debrief, no blame, just data. Immediate reframing, immediate next action. He once said, "My attitude has always been, if you fall flat on your face, at least you're moving forward." Notice the psychology. He doesn't pause to evaluate whether the fall hurts. He focuses on the direction, forward. Let's break down how this worked in real time. When Virgin Atlantic nearly collapsed in the early days, strikes, aircraft issues, money shortages, government resistance, Branson didn't disappear for weeks to reflect. He didn't freeze. He didn't panic. He immediately convened meetings, reframed the problem, and acted within hours. He knew that momentum heals. He knew that action rewires the brain faster than reflection. And he knew that a fast rebound prevents fear from taking root. You might think this is unrealistic, but in reality, it's the most practical performance skill you can build. It's not that Branson never felt stress, it's that he refused to get stuck in it. Why speed of recovery is more important than the failure itself. Let's simplify the psychology behind this. Failure creates emotional shock. Shock delays action. Delayed action becomes avoidance. Avoidance becomes identity. You start saying things like, "I'm not good at this. I need more time. I don't want to go through that again." That's the real danger. Not the mistake, the meaning you create during the lag. Don't just take my word for it. Look at every high performer. They all share this one trait. They shorten the lag. They move quickly. Whether you like it or not, high performers don't process failure slower. They process it faster because they refuse to let the emotional narrative settle. No one can deny that failure hurts, but what's often overlooked is this. Pain fades when motion begins. Not because you ignore the failure, but because you refuse to marinate in it. That's the key distinction. It's not about ignoring your emotions. It's about interrupting the spiral before the spiral becomes a story. Far from being reckless, quick recovery is actually one of the most stabilizing habits you can build. Remember, it's not the fall, it's the lag. How Branson reframes failure in minutes, not months. What we need is not endless analysis, but rather rapid reframing. Branson does this in 3 steps. 1. Strip the failure of meaning. He doesn't let emotion attach itself to the event. He asks, what actually happened? What's the data? What do we know for sure? He removes the drama. He removes the shame. He removes the guilt. He reduces failure to what it is, information. 2. Flip the angle. Branson asks a different question than most people. Most ask, why did this go wrong? But he asks, what new opportunity did this reveal? The real question is not how the failure hurt you, but how it exposed a weakness that you can now eliminate permanently. Just as a pilot uses turbulence as feedback, so too does Branson use failure as improvement. 3. Assign immediate action. This is where most people crumble. They want clarity before action. But Branson knows clarity comes from action. He chooses one decisive move. Send an email, call a partner, redesign a process, start a new plan. Something immediate. Something small but directional. Not because the action solves everything, but because it reactivates forward motion. The 3-step rapid recovery routine for you. Now it's your turn. You don't need their permission to recover faster. You don't need a personality transplant. You need a routine. Here is the Branson-inspired, listener-ready, transformation-focused, 3-step system that will change your relationship with failure forever. Step 1. Name it without drama. Don't say, I failed. Say, this went wrong. This is about more than semantics. It's about separating your identity from the event. Write down 3 things. What happened, why it happened, what it teaches you. Keep it factual. Keep it unemotional. This is your debrief. This is your data. If we don't strip the meaning out, then we risk carrying the failure into every future decision. Step 2. Choose a new frame with intention. Ask, what opportunity is hiding inside this setback? What weakness did this expose that I can now fix? How is this guiding me, not stopping me? You might think this is forced optimism, but in reality, it's strategic thinking. Every failure reveals a point of friction. Every friction reveals a point of leverage. Not only does this reframe empower you, but it also prevents you from repeating the same mistake twice. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of the upgraded version of you. Step 3. Take one forward action in the next 24 hours. This is non-negotiable. Make the call. Fix the system. Restart the task. Try again. Begin again. The more important issue is not the size of the action, but the speed of it. Momentum doesn't come from victory. Momentum comes from action. Remember the rule. It's not the fall, it's the lag. Shorten the lag, and you shorten your suffering. Shorten your suffering, and you accelerate your growth. Whether you like it or not, your recovery speed is one of the strongest predictors of your future success. Why this matters now. Branson's companies were built not on perfection, but on resilience. Not on flawless execution, but on relentless recovery. He bounced back so quickly that the world barely had time to count him out before he was already moving again. And now, that becomes your blueprint, your standard, your new identity. Because success doesn't come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from reducing the time between the mistake and your next move. You have a choice today. Stay down, or stand up faster than you ever have before. Chapter 6. Ignore the noise. How Branson overrode critics, experts, and gatekeepers. There's a moment in every leader's life when they face the wall of critics. The experts, the gatekeepers, the people who say, you can't. And Richard Branson has heard that sentence more times than most. But whether you like it or not, that's what shaped him into the kind of entrepreneur who builds industries instead of merely entering them. And that's the key. He stopped listening to the noise long before the world learned to listen to him. You might think criticism is harmless. You might think it's just feedback. But in reality, criticism, when left unchecked, becomes permission. Permission to hesitate. Permission to shrink. Permission to doubt yourself. And Branson learned early that you don't need their permission. What we need is not approval, but rather audacity backed by execution. Let's go back to one of the greatest examples in his career, Virgin Atlantic. When Branson announced he was launching an airline, the experts laughed. Not privately, publicly. An independent record store owner trying to compete with British Airways and Pan Am? Every authority in aviation told him it would fail. It wasn't just skepticism, it was ridicule. As Branson later said, the moment you start listening to critics, you lose sight of your vision. And no one can deny that he had no formal training in aviation. But what's often overlooked is that this was precisely why he succeeded. He wasn't trapped in conventional thinking. The real question is not why critics pushed back. The real question is why he ignored them. And the answer is simple. Critics don't build, critics observe. Branson repeats this idea in almost every interview. And if you internalize that now, you change your life. Because when you understand that observers don't carry the cost of your decision, you stop giving them power over your direction. Don't just take my word for it. Look at the facts. When Virgin Atlantic launched its first transatlantic flight, aviation analysts predicted the airline would collapse in under a year. British Airways dismissed him as a joke. Newspaper headlines questioned whether a music man could grasp airline economics. People mock the idea of a single-plane airline challenging the giants. It's easy to say, ignore them, but harder to live through that kind of scrutiny when you're fighting for survival. And yet Branson didn't flinch. Not because he was fearless, but because he disciplined his attention. It's not about ego, it's about intention. He had one mission: make the passenger experience radically better. That clarity drowned out the noise. Just as Branson pushed forward despite the experts, so too must you push forward despite the people who haven't built what you're trying to build. Whether you like it or not, your future is being shaped by the voices you choose to listen to. And if you don't take control of that, then you risk building a life directed by spectators instead of creators. Here's what we forget. Criticism often masquerades as wisdom. Someone says, "I'm just trying to protect you." Someone else says, "I've seen this fail before." Another says, "People like you don't get those opportunities." And it sounds logical. It sounds grounded. But it's not that they are right. It's that their worldview is small. It's not that they don't want you to succeed. It's that they can't imagine success that doesn't follow their blueprint. You have a choice today: stay small enough to earn their approval, or grow large enough to make their approval irrelevant. Branson understood this. When British Airways launched a smear campaign against him, secretly booking Virgin flights, stealing customers, feeding negative stories to the press, he didn't crumble. He didn't pause. He fought back. He sued them and won. But more importantly, he stayed focused. He kept building. As he put it, "You will never do anything of real value if you let others define what's possible." That's not motivation. That's an operating principle. And here is the more important issue. Most people don't fail because of the critics outside. They fail because of the critic inside. Their internal narrator absorbs every doubt and magnifies it. That's the trap. Approval is a drug, and like any drug, it creates dependency. The more you seek it, the less you trust yourself. The more validation you need, the slower you move. And remember, speed is a strategy. If you wait for permission, you will wait forever. This is about more than confidence. It's about autonomy. It's about reclaiming your decision-making power. It's about deliberately training yourself to act without applause, without reassurance, without validation. So let's break down how you apply Branson's method. Not theoretically, practically. Your new discipline: acting without permission. Branson uses 3 core behaviors to override critics and gatekeepers. These aren't flashy. They are repeatable. And they work because they shift your locus of control inward. 1. He assumes ownership of the vision. Before the world believes, you must believe. Not because belief is magical, but because belief creates consistency, and consistency creates results. Branson once said, "If your dreams don't scare you, they're too small." But that fear must belong to you, not to the outside world. Your task: write the vision down. Define what success looks like to you. Define why it matters. Because clarity kills doubt. Critics thrive in your uncertainty, not in your confidence. 2. He restricts whose voice counts. Branson didn't listen to everyone. He listened to customers' team data, his own intuition. That's it. What we need is not more opinions, but rather fewer relevant voices with deeper insight. Your task: create a circle of 5. People whose feedback you actually value. Everyone else becomes background noise. This isn't arrogance. It's strategy. 3. He acts before approval arrives. Branson doesn't wait. He builds. He launches. He learns through action. You might think action without approval is reckless, but in reality, it's how you gain leverage. Because action creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence. Confidence dissolves external noise. Your task: choose one action you've been delaying because you're worried about others. Do it within 24 hours. Not next week. Not later. Now. Because if we don't train this muscle, then we risk living our entire lives in hesitation, detaching from the validation loop. You need to understand this. Validation is addictive because it feels like progress. Someone says, "Good job," and you feel momentum. But momentum built on praise crashes the moment praise disappears. Far from being harmless, internalizing critics actually slows your evolution. So you must make a decision. Do you want applause or outcomes? Do you want reassurance or results? Do you want to be observed or to be built? Because you can't have both. And that's the key Branson lived by from day one. He built an airline because he wanted to build it. He pursued space travel because he believed in it. He expanded into dozens of industries because he trusted his process. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't chase approval. He didn't look for applause. He moved. And you must do the same. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new discipline for you. A discipline that rejects the noise so you can amplify your power. A discipline that reminds you, critics don't build, critics observe. And your job is to build. Chapter 7. Build a team that thrives on failure. Every high performer eventually learns a truth they wish someone had told them earlier. You cannot outgrow the limits of the people around you. Whether you like it or not, your environment is either accelerating your ambition or suffocating it. And Richard Branson understands this at a level few leaders ever reach. He knows the real engine behind Virgin's successes isn't luck, isn't timing, and isn't even his own personality. It's the team. The team is the multiplier. The team is the differentiator. And that's the key. Your success is not built alone. It's built with people who know how to fall and get back up without fear. You have a choice today. You can build a circle that reinforces caution, or a circle that reinforces action. And Branson's entire leadership philosophy leans into the second option. Not because it's easy, but because it's transformative. You might think that Branson hires based on polished resumes, prestigious degrees, or flawless backgrounds. But in reality, he does the opposite. He hires for energy. He hires for adaptability. He hires for people who can pivot fast, think creatively, and bounce back from adversity. As Branson himself said, "I'd rather hire someone with the right attitude than someone with a perfect CV." No one can deny that credentials have value, but what's often overlooked is that credentials don't predict resilience. Credentials don't measure courage. Credentials don't reveal who you'll be when everything goes wrong. And the more important issue is this: Branson isn't building teams to avoid failure. He's building teams to grow from it. That's why he creates what he calls a failure-friendly environment, a space where experimentation is rewarded and calculated risk-taking is expected. When the team stops fearing mistakes, innovation starts accelerating. Those are his words. And they are not just inspirational, they are strategic. Just as he builds businesses that can survive turbulence, so too does he build people who can navigate uncertainty without shutting down. What we need is not people who avoid mistakes, but rather people who turn mistakes into momentum. Let's break this down through a real example. When Branson launched Virgin Atlantic, the team made expensive errors, from logistical issues to marketing missteps. In any traditional corporate environment, that would have led to fear, blame, and paralysis. But Branson refused to let the culture collapse into caution. Instead, he reframed every failure as data. Every setback became a source of insight. "Don't just take my word for it. Look at the results," he often says. Virgin didn't succeed because it avoided mistakes. It succeeded because the team wasn't afraid to keep moving. And that's the key principle you must apply. Speed of experimentation beats perfection of planning. It's easy to say you want a community that supports your goals, but harder to build one that challenges you, stretches you, and pushes you to take risks. It's not that people around you lack intelligence. It's that they lack the discipline to embrace failure as part of the journey. If we don't intentionally cultivate a failure-friendly circle, then we risk becoming prisoners of other people's fears. You must create a team, personal or professional, that operates differently. A team that normalizes risk. A team that celebrates initiative. A team that treats mistakes as stepping stones. So let's break Branson's method into its core components and apply it directly to your life. 1. Hire or surround yourself with energy, not credentials. Branson looks for people who bring momentum into the room. People who think in solutions, not excuses. As he has said many times, train them well enough so they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to. You might think that intelligence alone drives success, but in reality, energy drives execution. And execution beats intellect every time. That's the key. Your action. Stop asking, what have they done? Start asking, how do they show up? Do they take ownership? Do they move fast? Because what we need is not more knowledge, but rather more initiative. 2. Build a failure-friendly environment. Branson repeats this idea. When people stop fearing mistakes, innovation accelerates. Far from being reckless, This mindset actually increases accountability. Why? Because when people aren't afraid of punishment, they're more honest about what's working and what isn't. Your action. Establish one rule in your circle. Mistakes must be shared, not hidden. After every project, ask, what worked? What failed? What did we learn? You don't need their permission to create this environment. You just need consistency. 3. Reward pivots, not perfection. The real question is not, did you get it right the first time? The real question is, did you adjust fast? Branson values adaptability because it signals courage, creativity, and self-awareness. When Virgin Galactic faced setbacks, engine failures, and public skepticism, the team didn't freeze. They pivoted. They recalibrated. They iterated. And Branson kept reminding them, every success story is a tale of constant adaptation. Your action. Celebrate attempts, not just outcomes. Praise speed of learning, not just accuracy of results. Reinforce that pivoting is a sign of leadership, not weakness. 4. Remove the fear culture. Whether you like it or not, fear kills performance. If your team is afraid of being wrong, they will never be bold enough to be right. Your action. Ban phrases like "what if it fails?" Replace them with "what does the next version look like?" Replace blame with accountability. Replace shame with reflection. It's not that mistakes are acceptable. It's that they are essential. 5. Build your personal board of advisors. Branson surrounds himself with thinkers, pilots, engineers, marketers, adventurers, who challenge him, stretch him, and bring different forms of intelligence to the table. He isn't threatened by this. He welcomes it. Your action. Identify 3 to 5 people who elevate your energy. Identify 3 to 5 people who drain your energy. Start adjusting your proximity accordingly. Because the more you grow, the more intentional your environment must become. Here's the truth. Innovation dies in environments built on fear. And you have a choice. You can tolerate a circle that worships caution, or you can build a circle that normalizes courage. Not only will this reshape your results, but it will also reshape your identity. You might think you can rise above the influence of your environment, but in reality, your environment shapes your thinking more than your thinking shapes your environment. So choose wisely. Build intentionally. And remember, the team you build determines the future you experience. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new standard. A standard where failure isn't the enemy, stagnation is. A standard where your circle fuels your ambition, not your hesitation. Chapter 8. Scale what works, drop what doesn't. Every ambitious person eventually reaches a crossroads where their success is not decided by effort, but by focus. You have a choice. You can keep everything you started simply because you started it, or you can become the kind of person who ruthlessly scales what works and decisively cuts what doesn't. And Richard Branson mastered this long before most entrepreneurs understood the concept. As he famously said, business opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming. That's the key. You don't need to cling. You need to choose. In Branson's world, progress isn't just about creating. It's about pruning. Not only launching new ideas, but also letting old ones go. Not because they were failures, but because they were drains. Drains on time, drains on attention, drains on momentum. What we need is not more projects, but rather more results. And Branson is relentlessly committed to this truth. It's easy to say you should focus on what works, but harder to let go of what doesn't, especially when you've invested time, emotion, and identity into it. You might think that passion alone guarantees success, but in reality, passion without performance becomes a trap. That's the key. Scale the strengths, cut the drains. Let's look at Branson's own record. Virgin is one of the few empires in modern business built not through obsessive focus on one industry, but through constant experimentation across many. But here's the hidden insight. Virgin doesn't just expand, it prunes. Often. And aggressively. Branson has shut down dozens of ventures over the decades. Virgin Cars, Virgin Clothing, Virgin Brides, Virgin Cola, Virgin Digital. The list is long. And when asked about cutting projects he personally loved, Branson said, "You must not be frightened of closing things down if they are not working." No one can deny that emotionally, closing a venture hurts. But what's often overlooked is that keeping it alive hurts you more. It steals from the winners. It steals from your future. Now contrast Virgin Brides, a playful idea that never gained momentum, with Virgin Atlantic, which became a global aviation icon. Virgin Brides had charm, but not traction. Virgin Atlantic had traction, results, customer love, and global relevance. The real question is not why Virgin Brides failed, but why Branson moved on so quickly. Because he understands a core law of achievement. Momentum compounds only when protected. You can't scale everything. You must choose. So what made Virgin Atlantic a winner? Branson doubled down relentlessly. He reinvested profits. He improved service based on customer complaints. He focused on quality. He pushed for innovation, from onboard entertainment to customer experience upgrades, while letting go of smaller ventures that weren't moving the needle. That's the key. Double down on the winners. And that's where your discipline must rise. You have a choice every day. Cling to things that drain you because they feel familiar, or invest deeper into the things that prove they work. It's not that you're doing too little. It's that you're doing too much. The more important issue is not effort, but allocation. Just as Branson built an empire by pruning, so too can you build your life by removing instead of adding. And far from being a setback, it actually accelerates your results. Cutting the wrong things makes room for the right things to expand. Let's break down Branson's method and turn it into a practical blueprint you can use immediately. 1. Conduct a ruthless pruning review every quarter. Branson regularly reviews every Virgin venture with one guiding principle. If it's not working, stop feeding it. He does not drag unprofitable ideas forward out of guilt or nostalgia. Your action. Make a list of everything you're currently doing. Projects, commitments, routines, responsibilities. Label them with one of 3 categories. Winner, growing, neutral, flat, drain, declining. Then do the uncomfortable part. Cut one drain immediately. You don't need their permission. You need your progress. 2. Measure traction, not emotion. Branson liked some of his failed ventures. He believed in them. But belief doesn't pay the bills. Traction does. He prioritizes objective data over emotional attachment. Your action. Ask the 3 questions Branson asks. Is it growing? Is it improving? Is it returning value for time, money, or energy? If the answer is no to all 3, the decision is made. Cut it. It's not that you don't care. It's that you care about the right things. 3. Double down on what works fast. When Virgin Atlantic showed promise early on, Branson didn't move slowly. He leaned in. He invested. He became obsessive about customer experience. He said, "My philosophy has always been, if something works, keep improving it." Your action. Identify one current winner in your life. Increase your investment in it by 25 to 50%. More time, more resources, more focus. Not because it's safe, but because it's proven. 4. Protect your energy from silent drains. Some projects are not dramatic failures. They are subtle drains. They slowly consume energy, creativity, and bandwidth. They rob your winners of oxygen. Your action. Look for the commitments that feel heavy, unclear, or obligatory. Ask yourself, if I dropped this today, would anything meaningful collapse? If the answer is no, that's your sign. It's easy to maintain what's familiar. It's harder to eliminate what's unnecessary. But that's the discipline. 5. Create a scale plan for your top performer. Branson doesn't just scale randomly. He scales strategically. Virgin Atlantic didn't grow because he hoped it would. It grew because he built a plan around what was working. Your action. For your biggest winner, outline a 12-week plan. What are the top 3 actions that would expand it? What are the top 3 distractions you must eliminate? What is the measurable target? This isn't the end. It's the beginning of your upgrade. Here's the truth. You cannot win big by trying to win everywhere. You might think that keeping more doors open gives you more opportunity, but in reality, it gives you more dilution. Focus is a force multiplier, and Branson's career proves this at every turn. If we don't adopt this discipline, then we risk spending years maintaining the wrong things instead of scaling the right ones. And whether you like it or not, life will reward you not for what you start, but for what you scale. So ask yourself, what's working? What's not? What deserves more? What deserves nothing? This is about more than cutting projects. It's about cutting your hesitation. It's about more than scaling strengths. It's about scaling your identity as a decisive operator. Scale the strengths. Cut the drains. That's the standard now. Chapter 9. Make failure part of your brand. There's a powerful truth that most people will never admit. The way you handle failure defines your brand more than your successes ever will. Whether you like it or not, people notice mistakes. They notice hesitation. They notice excuses. And Richard Branson understands this better than almost anyone. He doesn't hide his failures. He embraces them. He broadcasts them. And that's the key. Failure, when managed strategically, becomes credibility. You have a choice. You can try to appear perfect, smooth, infallible. Or you can turn every setback into a story that reinforces your authority. Branson chooses the latter. Not because it's easy, but because it works. And far from being embarrassing, it actually attracts loyalty, respect, and opportunities. You might think that sharing failure is risky. You might think it undermines authority. But in reality, it strengthens it. People follow the leader who owns the mess, not the leader who hides it. That's the discipline you need to adopt immediately. Let's look at an example. Virgin Cola. Branson's attempt to take on Coca-Cola was ambitious, but it failed spectacularly. The product flopped. Retailers rejected it. Analysts predicted disaster. Most entrepreneurs would have quietly shelved the venture and pretended it never happened. Not Branson. He publicly acknowledged the failure. He joked about it in interviews. He shared the lessons. And as he later reflected, mistakes are simply part of the journey. If you don't own them, you let them own you. That's the key. Transparency as a power move. When you openly share failures, you achieve 3 things simultaneously. Trust. People see that you're human. They see that you make decisions, take risks, and accept responsibility. Relatability. Your audience or team doesn't fear you. They aspire to emulate your courage, authority. Experience beats theory. If you've failed and learned, you now speak from a position no observer ever can. Don't just take my word for it. Look at Virgin Atlantic. During its early years, flights were delayed, systems failed, and competitors mocked Branson's audacity. Instead of hiding these setbacks, Branson communicated openly with customers, admitted mistakes, and offered solutions. The result? Not only did trust grow, but brand loyalty skyrocketed. People didn't just buy flights, they joined a movement. And that's what we need to replicate in your life. Now, the more important issue is how you can convert vulnerability into authority in your own world. This is about more than just telling people when you messed up. It's about framing it strategically. Here's the Branson method for turning mistakes into brand capital. 1. Publicly acknowledge key failures. Branson never hides missteps. He doesn't sugarcoat, spin, or distract. Transparency builds credibility. Your action. Identify 1 to 3 notable failures in your work or personal life. Craft short, honest stories highlighting what went wrong, what you learned, how you moved forward. It's easy to say, I failed, but harder to present it in a way that reinforces authority. That's the discipline. 2. Reframe the failure as a lesson. Far from being shameful, failure is educational. Every misstep contains actionable intelligence if you know where to look. Your action. For each failure you identify, ask, what was the warning I ignored? What did I learn about process, people, or myself? How will this knowledge prevent a bigger problem in the future? Just as Branson converted Virgin Cola's failure into insights for future products, so too can you use each misstep as a blueprint for better decisions. Not because failure is desirable, but because learning fast multiplies your power. 3. Integrate the failure into your story. This is where most people falter. They acknowledge mistakes privately but fail to incorporate them into their personal or brand narrative. Branson does the opposite. He owns it publicly, and it becomes part of the story of his resilience. Your action. Write a brief personal failure narrative that includes the challenge, the setback, the turnaround. If we don't do this, then we risk remaining defined by embarrassment rather than mastery. If we do, failure becomes the foundation of your authority. 4. Teach from your experience. Branson uses failure as a teaching tool, internally for his team and externally for the public. This transforms a personal weakness into a value proposition. Your action. After sharing a failure, highlight the key lesson in a practical, replicable step. This taught me to always check assumptions before launching. This showed me the importance of speed over perfection. Your audience or team now sees your vulnerability as an asset, not a liability. It's not that Branson's failures were glamorous. It's that he leveraged them. You might think that mistakes lower credibility, but in reality, they enhance it if framed correctly. And that's the key distinction. 5. Normalize failure across your circle. If you want your brand or team to thrive, you must signal that failure is expected, not feared. This creates a culture where action outweighs caution. Your action. In meetings, acknowledge your missteps. Ask your team or peers to do the same. Reward honest analysis of what didn't work. Not only does this reduce paralysis, but also accelerates innovation. People take calculated risks because they know missteps won't be punished. They'll be leveraged. Here's a fundamental truth. Your failures define your credibility more than your successes define your image. People are attracted to leaders who demonstrate courage, resilience, and transparency. You don't need permission to own your mistakes. You don't need validation to leverage them. The more you internalize this, the more powerful you become. It's easy to say, embrace failure, but harder to do it consistently and strategically. It's not about wallowing in embarrassment. It's about converting setbacks into momentum. And that's the discipline Branson mastered decades ago. You might think the world rewards perfection, but in reality, it rewards authentic resilience. Far from being a liability, visible failure signals experience, risk tolerance, and emotional intelligence. Whether you like it or not, people are watching how you respond to adversity. And if you respond like Branson, strategically, openly, and confidently, you transform your failures into your most compelling asset. So here's your upgrade. Identify a failure, acknowledge it, publicly extract lessons, teach others, integrate it into your identity. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new way of operating. Your credibility, influence, and authority now grow not despite your failures, but because of them. Chapter 10. Fail forward forever. Turn every misstep into momentum. If there is one lesson that Richard Branson has proven over a lifetime, it's this: the only real failure is standing still. You have a choice. You can let setbacks stop you, or you can let them propel you forward. That's the key. Branson didn't build an empire by avoiding mistakes. He built it by using mistakes as fuel. And far from being a fluke, this is a repeatable, systematic approach. From Virgin Records to Virgin Galactic, Branson's formula has remained consistent. Launch boldly, fail quickly, adjust strategically, then launch again. He describes it simply. Business is all about taking chances, learning from mistakes, and moving forward. That is the ultimate compounding system. It's not a philosophy, it's a discipline. It's easy to say, keep going, but harder to act when the last project tanked. You might think that repeated missteps will ruin you, but in reality, they accelerate you. Every failure contains a hidden advantage, a lesson, a data point, a pivot. The more important issue is not the setback itself, but how quickly you recover, adjust, and re-engage. This is about more than resilience. It's about strategic momentum. 1. Embrace the cycle. Launch, fail, adjust, launch again. Branson treats each venture like a laboratory experiment. Virgin Cola failed. Virgin Digital failed. Virgin Airlines almost failed multiple times. Each misstep wasn't an endpoint. It was a signal. And that's the discipline you need. Failure is feedback, not a verdict. Your action. Identify one recent failure in your life. Write down the insights you've gained. Determine one corrective action. Execute it within 24 to 48 hours. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for certainty. The real question is not whether you will fail again, but how fast you will convert it into forward momentum. Branson repeats it often. Screw it, let's do it. Then fix it fast. That is not reckless. It's deliberate speed-based learning. 2. Build a permanent momentum mindset. The most successful people don't just recover, they accelerate. Branson calls it the momentum mindset. Keep moving, keep testing, keep correcting. It's easy to get discouraged after a misstep. It's harder to see it as an asset. But momentum compounds faster than skill or capital. Every small adjustment builds cumulative advantage. Your action. Set a short-term target that forces immediate action. Break it into micro steps. Take at least one step today. Celebrate small wins to reinforce forward motion. It's not about perfection, it's about movement. Just as a plane gains lift by staying in motion, so too does your progress rely on continuous forward action. 3. Make course correction routine. Branson doesn't treat course correction as extraordinary. He treats it as standard operating procedure. This is how Virgin Airlines survived near bankruptcy and became a global leader. Adjustments were constant. Strategy was dynamic. And execution was relentless. Your action. After each misstep, ask 3 critical questions. What worked? What failed? What is my next move? Not because reflection alone changes outcomes, but because reflection fuels informed action. The more you integrate course correction into daily practice, the faster your momentum accelerates. 4. Reframe fear as fuel. Every failure triggers fear. Most people let it freeze them. Branson uses fear as a compass. The areas that intimidate you are exactly where growth lives. The lesson: the fear you feel is the path you need. Your action: identify a recent failure that generated fear. Break it into actionable steps that reduce uncertainty. Move deliberately through the discomfort. It's easy to procrastinate. It's harder to convert fear into forward energy. But that's the discipline that separates leaders from observers. Far from being paralyzing, fear becomes an accelerant when harnessed correctly. 5. Institutionalize learning from setbacks. Branson doesn't just apply lessons personally, he codifies them. At Virgin, every team is encouraged to document failures and the lessons learned. This prevents repeated mistakes and ensures collective momentum. Your action: maintain a failure log for yourself or your team. Document missteps, causes, and solutions. Review weekly and adjust strategies accordingly. You don't need permission to learn faster than others. Not because mistakes are enjoyable, but because systematic reflection compounds results. The more structured your learning, the faster your forward trajectory. 6. Turn momentum into a habit. Momentum isn't occasional, it's habitual. Branson wakes each day asking, what can I test today? What can I learn? What can I fix? You must adopt this mindset permanently. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of a lifelong practice of failing forward. Your action: build a daily routine of action, reflection, and adjustment. Include micro-experiments that challenge your assumptions. Treat every setback as an input, not an endpoint. Whether you like it or not, life will give you obstacles. You don't get to avoid them, but you can use them to accelerate your growth. 7. Amplify small wins into bigger results. Branson understands leverage. Small improvements, when executed repeatedly, compound into massive outcomes. Momentum isn't always about large leaps. It's about consistent, iterative progress. Your action: identify one small success today, scale it, repeat. Not because small wins are flashy, but because cumulative impact is unstoppable. The more forward motion you create, the more the world aligns to support you. 8. Make forward motion non-negotiable. Branson's ultimate rule is simple: never stop moving. If we don't maintain constant momentum, we risk stagnation, regret, and missed opportunity. The final lesson is this: failing forward is a lifestyle, not a tactic. Momentum is built, maintained, and accelerated deliberately. Your action: commit to a no-excuses forward motion plan. Treat failure as fuel, not as friction. Evaluate, adjust, act, repeat relentlessly. You might think repeated missteps slow progress, but in reality, they accelerate it if processed correctly. That is the Branson system: launch, fail, adjust, and launch again, forever. By now, you've learned how to stop playing safe, fail fast and learn faster, turn problems into profit, build fear immunity, bounce back rapidly, ignore critics, build teams that thrive on mistakes, scale winners and cut drains, make failure part of your brand, and finally, fail forward forever. The ultimate takeaway: failure is not your enemy, it is your most powerful tool for growth. You don't need permission to apply it. You don't need approval to act. You have the formula. You have the discipline. You have the choice. Now, take everything you've learned. Launch boldly. Adjust ruthlessly. Fail strategically. And keep moving forward, forever. You've mastered your fear, your focus, and your failure. The question is, Will you now fail forward forever? This is your challenge. Step into it.